received a comment from a YouTube watcher by the name of Silvers Rayleigh, and Silvers was having a lot of trouble with a Batman cosplay outfit that he was trying to bring into his slicer and slice for 3D printing. I downloaded after a bit of backwards and forwards and to and fro via email and comments in the comments section, as you can see here. I downloaded the model from Thingiverse and opened it up. It's a Blender file, and opened it up in Blender and saw that the geometry was only one wall thickness thick. It was only just like a shell rather than a three-dimensional piece of geometry. So I took it into Blender and had a look, and you can see this piece is fine. It's got three-dimensionality to it, but this piece here, where are we? I'll just focus on this piece. It just looks like a shell. There's no actual thickness to that geometry. And so I thought, okay, well that's a bit of an issue. So what I was going to do was I downloaded the file, and I was going to spend today, I've set up for this purpose, spend it today going over this file and making sure that it's suitable for 3D printing. But before I started, I thought I'd just have a quick look at the files in Cocoon to see how they look as they are. And if I load a piece of this suit, if I grab side one of the bust section, you can see that it's actually, well, that piece has got geometry. Load the abs. Okay, so ab one. Now you can see here in Cura, this is Cura 1604. It's got the same issue where it's just one layer of just one edge really of geometry. But the curious thing is that when you go to look at it in layers for slicing, it's actually going to print okay. The slice is filling in the back piece and adding the missing geometry. So that will actually print quite okay. And I've also noticed that the STL file is a lot smoother than the geometry in the Blender file. Now this can all be fixed. It's basically the subdivision modifier has just been turned off, and we can see that it's rendering a lot smoother. But we could even make that even smoother again. What I would do is, I may as well turn this into a little bit of a tutorial while I'm here, is I would take, in this particular piece, I would take all the triangles out of the mesh, because when you're working with polygons, you want quads, you want four-sided polygons. They're going to give you the most even and smoothest curve once you subdivide the surfaces. So what I would do here is just switch those to edit mode and face mode, select all the faces and go to mesh, faces, and tries to quads. So I'm taking out as many triangles as I can. Now if I turn the subdivision surface back on, you can see it's looking a lot better already, and I might just up the subdivisions to 5, and this is the resolution that I would put the model at if I was to 3D print this. You'll get a much smoother surface. If I go back to the way it was, all right, all triangles, and if I duplicate that, I'll show you what the difference is going to be. So this is the way it currently is output at this resolution and this finish. I'll take this and do the same thing again. Select all those faces, go to Mesh, Faces, and Tries to Quads. So make them quads, and then I'll up the subdivisions to 5. So this is how it currently prints on the left here, and this is how I would output it for print. You can see you're going to get a much nicer finish once it's printed. The mesh resolution is going to go up, the file size will be larger, but that won't affect your print once it's sliced. It'll just slice it at that resolution, and the file size once it's sliced will be the same as what we're looking at here. So I'm wondering if Silver's had an issue with his slicer where it wasn't doing the same thing that Cura 1604 is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Ultimaker site, grab the latest version of Cura, Products, Software, Ultimaker Cura, and we'll grab 3.6. Okay, so we'll get that download going, and once it's downloaded I'll install Cura 3.6, and I'm just curious to see if he's using a slicer like 3.6, whether it's doing something different to what Cura 1604 does. I know that when I output STL files from Blender to Cura 1604, I have to use a different scale if I go to Cura 3.6. The two software packages have a complete different scaling. Abs. Let's grab that abs piece. Okay, so we're in Cura 3.6. We're looking at that add piece. Let's see if it's going to print correctly. Why is that not updating? Why can't I see my layers? Now you can see here it's starting here, and the middle section is just not showing up at all, and then we get the end here. So let's have a look at the print setup. I'm wondering if that's the issue, because in Cura 1604 it has no problems with the mesh at all, even though if we look at normal view there's no thickness to the actual shell of the geometry. It's still going to print it, not a problem. Now I'm looking at my expert settings here, and keep open faces is ticked, everything else is turned off. So I don't see, my shell thickness is 1.2 millimeters. Let's see if we can replicate that. No, the same problem. Okay. Let's see if there's some more mesh fixes we can test. Okay, let's turn them all on. So they're all available down here. And turn everything off, do a slice and see what happens. And we'll go through one at a time and see if we can fix that problem. Extensive stitching, let's see if that works. Nope. keep disconnected faces. Oh, here we go. Keep disconnected faces. All right, so that seems to have solved the problem. Okay, so if you're trying to print this Batman suit and you're getting geometry which is looking like this, where it's just a single shell and there's no back piece to close it off to make it a solid object, all I did was go to the mesh fixes settings, ticked all these on so they're available. You can do this with any of the other modes. If you find that you're not finding what you want in this section here, you can click on the little settings wheel and tick on the different areas that you want to add to these selections. So there's more options than are visible in this section by default. So in mesh fixes, I just ticked everything on for testing, saved it, closed it, and then just ticked on keep disconnected faces, did another slice, prepare to slice, and sliced, and it's solved the problem. So today I was going to spend the day working on this Batman costume to get it to a point where it's printable. But after looking at and seeing how to fix that mesh so it will print in Cura, which is a surprise to me. I thought that wouldn't print. Looking at the mesh with no faces, I would have thought that wouldn't have printed. So what I would do is to fill this face in if I was modeling this, and I would do that by switching to edit mode and selecting an edge, and filling it, and just working my way along. And I'm just pressing F to fill. And this is the way I would send the mesh out to print or to slice. And you can see it's just going to close the back in and give me a nice finish on a nice surface for that. I might as well finish that while I'm here. And fill. That looks better. So that's the way I would put that mesh out, and then you wouldn't have any of those issues. It would just print no problems at all. But seeing as it works, you can print it from Cura 3.6, and interestingly the scale is the same as it is in Cura 1604. I'll show you what happens if I try and do out of Blender this piece. I'll just export this piece here. So I'll export it as an STL, and give it a name and selection only. Now you'll see down on the left here that the scale is at 1, and I'm going to tick on scene unit, so selection only, scene unit, and apply modifiers. So what's going to happen is all those other pieces are still in that scene, so if I didn't have selection only ticked on, all those pieces will be exported as one file, all just jumbled together. And apply modifiers is going to take that subdivision surface that I've got, that subdivision surface modifier that I've got applied to that model to make it all smooth, and it's going to just break it down to individual polygons and make it one mesh of a very high resolution mesh of polygons, and export as an STL file. So let's give that a test. Now I'm going to do the same thing again, and this time I'm going to make the scale 1000. And we'll call this a Cura 3.6 because I suspect that the scale will be wrong. It's either 1000 or 100, I can't remember. We'll try it and see what happens. Okay, now my mesh is going to be a much higher resolution. So we'll clear our platform. I'm going to load the STL that came with the file. And you can see it's not as smooth as it could be, but if we slice, look at the slicing on that. That's sliced, that's going to print fine, and it's 2 hours 34 minutes. Let's see what happens if I bring in my higher resolution mesh and see if it makes any difference to the print time. Now it's a higher resolution, higher res mesh, so it's going to take a bit longer to slice. And we were at 2 hours, it was at 2 hours 24 or 34, but you can see the time's basically the same to print this, but we're going to get a much higher resolution file or finish on the object. And if we look at the layers, just this view, you can see it's just a much nicer finish. So there's no extra print time, a little bit of extra slicing time, but no extra print time, and the finish is so much nicer. So let's try bringing that into Cura 3.6. It was ABS 2, wasn't it? Yeah, ABS 2. Keep disconnected faces, and we'll prepare that. So that's going to print fine. And we'll look at the solid view. So that's the original. Now, what's the print time? And now, an hour and 33 minutes on Cura 3.6, so that's a lot faster. Interestingly, I might do a test. I've got a print to do. I might do a test in 3.6 and see how fast that'll print that file. So we're at an hour and 33. New project. I'll bring in the one I exported, Cura 3.6. Well, first I'll bring in the export, which is scale at scale 1:1 from Blender. And we've got the warning: the selected model was too small to load. You see down the bottom here, so that's not going to work. If I close that, create a new project and open the file, this time I'll get the 3.6, which was scaled at 1000% out of Blender. And you'll see it's the right size. So if you're exporting files for slicing or STL files from Blender, always make sure that if it's going to Cura 15, 16, that version, then your export settings need to be at a scale of 1. And if you're going to Cura 3.6, your scale needs to be 1000. So for future models, what I'll do is I'll put out both my STL files. I'll put out at a scale of 1 and a scale of 1000, and I'll actually list which version of Cura it's for, so Cura 15.16 and Cura 3.0. And then when you open the file, it's going to open up quite alright. But you can see here, this is the output I did. The finish is much smoother, much nicer. And let's slice it to see what the time was for this. See if the print time increases because of the extra resolution of the mesh, which I don't believe it will. Hour and 21 minutes, that's basically identical to what the other one was. But you're going to get a much smoother and nicer mesh. Alright, well, I think that's going to solve Silver's problem, and I think this video will help him a lot in getting his model, or this particular Batman cosplay outfit out and ready to print. It all seems to be fine. I'll go through and check each piece or most of the pieces and just see what happens. I might just have a quick look at the helmet while we're here. There we go. Okay, it's too big for my printer. But I think we can get that finish a lot nicer. So let's look at that in Blender. So I'm just going to just look at this mesh. Okay, so let's switch this to faces mode. Make sure all the faces are selected, and I'm going to switch them back to quads where I can. Tries to quads, and we'll put a subdivision surface modifier on it and crank that up. So now we have a really nice smooth mesh. And I'm going to export that as an STL, and we'll call it it's called mask, bat mask, and this will be for Cura 3.6. It's going to take a little while to export due to the number of vertices in the model, but a little bit of extra time here will mean that the model is going to be so much nicer once it's printed. The finish will be so much smoother. Probably could have gone, I had a subdivision surface level of 4, probably could have got away with 3, and it would have been a much faster export time. We'll see how long this takes. I'll time it. Okay, that's just finished. So that took about, I'd say about 3 minutes to export with a subdivision level of 4. Let's take it down to 3, and we've still got a very nice finish, and we'll export that at subdivision level of 3 and see how long that takes. I'll overwrite the same file. Okay, that took a minute, 56 seconds, so close to a minute. So that cut a fair bit off the export time. So I'm now going to export it for Cura 1604, scale of 1. So I'm just curious to see what the print time is going to be like out of 1604 versus Cura 3.6. Because what I saw before, it looked like there was a significant increase in print times from Cura 1604 to Cura 3.6. Now that may be at the expense of quality, so I will do a test print just to see to see if I can detect a big decrease or whether there's not much difference in quality at all, but it'd be curious to see. Okay, so we now have our two versions exported. Let's clear the platform here, and I'll load that mask 1604 into Cura 16.4, which is basically the same as 15.04. It will take a little longer to load due to the resolution of the mesh. While that's loading, I might try and load the other one into here. So I'll open the file, Cura 3.6 bat mask, open that one. Okay, let's look at our layers. Okay, did that fail? Interesting, I can't switch to the other Cura. Okay, this one's loaded. Looks like the mesh may be too dense for 1604. It's interesting. That's going to print quite okay, although this will need support under his nose there. Still keen to test the print speed, because the layer height actually on here is 0.15, where I've got 0.16 or 0.2 here. It's got me curious now. I need to see what the difference is. If I go back to that original file I had, into here, so that's that first piece I put out. I'm going to clear this. File, grab 3.6. And we're going to keep disconnected faces. I'll turn those two off. And layer height 0.15. Actually, I'll make that 0.16. I'll make that 0.16. And I'll make this slice at 0.16 layer height. I'll see how long that's going to take. 0.16, we'll repair that. Right, so Cura 1604 is telling me this is going to take 3 hours and 1 minute to print at a layer height of 0.16, and Cura 3.6 is telling me it's going to take 1 hour and 14 minutes. So 3 hours 1 minute, hour and 14 minutes. Now naturally the settings are going to be a little bit different because I don't know what these settings here are for print speed. So 60 is the print speed on 3.6. My print speed's 40. Okay, so that's where the difference is coming in. Let's see if we can match these up a little bit. We'll make that 60, make that 210. Wall speed 30. Travel, infill, outer speed 20. So okay, so it's a slower outer skin, so for a better quality print. We're going 30 here. Oh, 40. Outer wall speed 40. Inner wall speed 80. And I've got outer wall is 20, inner's 30, so that's a big difference. Okay, that's where the speed differences are coming from. But I'm still going to do a test. I've got a print I've got to do, so I'm going to, when I sliced it in 1604, it was telling me it's going to take 20 hours to print this particular piece. That's probably going to help a lot of people with that particular Batman model. That if you're having issues seeing the geometry properly in your slicer, it could be the settings in your slicer, and I would highly recommend looking at version 1604 or version 3.6 and just making sure that the mesh fixes settings are set to everything off, and keep disconnected faces on, and that solved the problem for me. So I'm sure that would be, you'll get the same result on your end. Well, I think that's it for this video. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, if you've got any files that you're having problems with, let me know and I'll have a look at them and see if we can come up with a solution for you and make a video of it so that other people can also benefit from that experience. So thanks again for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you later.